Hello and welcome to Chess Please. A very short one for you today. I just wanted to show you an explosive, fun game that I played yesterday that involved a brilliant move, a missed mate in one, a pawn checkmate, and our old pal the Vienna Gambit. So let's jump on in. Cheers. So as we mentioned, things kick off with our tried and tested Vienna Gambit. So we set up here, put our knight there on c3, and once they respond with knight to f6, then we can play the Vienna Gambit. And if you've seen the Vienna Gambit, you've done your homework, or you've seen a few videos that we've made on it, you'll know that if black takes that pawn on f4, you already have a distinct advantage as white. It's one of my favourite things to happen in chess when they do accept that Vienna Gambit, because you can actually bully this knight. There is nowhere good for this knight to go. This is covered, this is covered, this is covered by the queen, this is covered by the queen. So the best move for black here is to send that knight back to kingdom come, back where it came from. And if you look at the position now, we have this absolutely gorgeous pawn that is destined for great things.
Terrible, but great.
So keep an eye there. And we also have a knight developed, and they have a very weak pawn here that they're going to have to spend a lot of resources defending, or else just give us back the pawn. Now we have gambited a pawn, so that's fine. Now, I actually commit a cardinal sin of playing the Vienna Gambit here. While I've tried to defend this pawn a little early, got a bit greedy, got a bit hasty, I've actually forgotten one of the key principles, which is to put this knight on f3, because you absolutely don't want to allow this nasty queen check in here, particularly with the pawn here. There's no real great way to block it. You almost always end up, or you do end up losing the right to castle. King has to move here, and it turns into a whole thing. So we didn't do that. We didn't put our knight on f3. Thankfully, our opponent didn't spot us, let us off the hook, gave us a chance at redemption. We pop our knight there on f3, and now we are cruising. We're about +1 in the eval bar, +2 to 5 in our heads for some reason, and we just take back that pawn. So now the gambit that we gave away at the start, we're back to parity and hugely ahead, both in terms of like piece activity and piece development. We're just going to continue that. Pawn coming out here just to free this bishop, that's fine. I don't really mind if a trade happens here because of the absolute conglomerate of pieces we have defending that e5 square. That is ours forevermore. So I'm just going to continue to develop, just get my bishop out and make a castle. Sorry, our opponent develops their knight, the one that we kicked out earlier on, to the very meager e7 square. Sometimes that's a good developing square. In this case, it was black's only choice to develop that knight without an unfavourable trade happening. So they developed that there, very passive. We just castle, and one of the other beautiful things of the Vienna Gambit is when you castle kingside, the rook is already free of charge and can just head on up that f-file at a moment's notice. So that's a nice little bonus. You do give away the f-pawn, so your king's a little more exposed, but so be it. And now my opponent makes their first blunder of the game, which is bishop to g4. Looks pretty innocuous, looks pretty good, you know, pinning this dangerous knight to the queen, you know, oftentimes can be a pretty good thing. But one thing to note is that pins go both ways. So if this knight were to move away with tempo, so that's something that black had to respond to, then this queen also discovers an attack on the bishop, in the same way vice versa if the knight moved away without tempo. So keeping that in mind, how can we move this knight away with tempo? Well, a check is the best tempo. So one way, we got to look at like where the knight can go on its next move, probably here. So either of these squares, can we get the king to either of these squares? And following on from that logic, we get our brilliant move of the game, as per the computer. Pretty generous brilliant move, because this comes up as a theme so often. But bishop takes on f7. Lovely way to gain a pawn, first and foremost, and just completely wreck black structure, because, you know, that f-pawn that we've given away, black isn't castled yet, so that is much more meaningful to take their f-pawn than our king, who is safely tucked away and can go to h1 if needs be. Now, while you're saying, oh, we've just given away a bishop, but as we went through, either the king doesn't take and just goes like here or here, which is a bit feeble, or the king takes, and now we can move our knight away, check, and the discovery on the bishop happens. So the king tucks back to its home square. Again, we just keep putting black back in the box. We're just not letting them get any sort of play going. And we take this bishop, and now we're actually only up one pawn. So the the whole brilliancy there just gave us that f-pawn. But if you look at our position, we are baring our teeth at black's king. Our king is plenty safe and sound, and there's really not a lot that can do in this situation. They try to kick out the knight. Admirable intention, but unfortunately the knight has an absolutely wonderful square here on e6 to threaten the queen, and also to threaten this pawn here on g7. A fork, no way for the queen to defend that, so it just gets out of the way. And pretty crucially, the knight moves away with check. So the check on this king renders this attack not a discovery as such, so our queen is safe for the moment. Something to file away though. Our queens are in opposition, or like facing each other, so don't forget about that and blunder your queen. King moves away. Didn't want to move here and maybe like allow some sort of discovery here with the rook. I think the computer thinks that's best as well. And I wanted to push this pawn just to crowd things up, just to really make this a very claustrophobic space for black. Computer actually preferred knight coming in here to e6 with check, but I felt like that was a bit kind of repeaty, so I didn't bother. So I put the pawn there. We actually do give away our d4 pawn here. It's not really giving away though, because again, the theme of discoveries on pieces with the queen, our bishop can actually take this h6 pawn. So again, we've actually only gone 2 pawns up now. So despite our dominance here, material largely like not insurmountable, I would say. Another beautiful thing about this, so we have discovered this attack on the knight, whoop-de-doo, but I think more importantly, the rook, if the rook happens to take this bishop, then that's actually a huge blunder, because that's checkmate. So a nice little defense, tactical defense of that bishop, which makes this pawn completely free gratis, with no downsides there as well. And black kind of has the right idea here. They see that the net is closing on the king. They want to make a few escape routes, and they're just not going to be in time, unfortunately. The main reason I took this pawn was actually to free up this square for the bishop. I see that this knight is actually doing quite a lot of good defense. Just, oh, not there. Just blocking a few squares, like just blocking the route into the king. It's the best defender at the moment. It's doing most on the defense. So I'd rather pin it in place with this bishop, or as turns out as needs be, we'll take that pawn, or take that knight with the bishop. Rook attacks the knight here, that's fine, because we can actually take that knight, again with check. A lot of these moves happening with check, forcing black's hand. Not only does that give us time to move our knight if we want, it also adds a defender, but that's really going to be a bit of a moot point. And the king takes here, our opponent's second major blunder of the game, and this is where I missed that mate in one. So I'll give you a second to try and find it yourself, and then we'll start to add a couple of hints. But mate in one, it doesn't look that obvious. I mean, it looks like the king has a few places to go. There's a bit of air around it, and unfortunately, not quite enough. So let's start to take away some of the king's squares. So can't go here, can't go here. Beautifully, this knight defends this pawn, and it defends this square here. So the king is blocked out of there. Can't come here because of the pawn or the rook, or can't come here because of the rook down here. So all that calculus done. This is the only square available for the king. Is there anything, it's white to move, is there anything we can do to take away that square? There's actually 2 things we could do, and I did neither of them. I missed this in the game. It's a blitz game, so I don't really care, but maybe I do, deep down. H4 is checkmate, as is G5. They both do the exact same thing of taking away that diagonal for the king. We missed this, and we just wanted to get more pieces to the party. Always our strategy. More pieces to the party. Knight comes in here with check. And again, with all of that calculus done, as I say, it does go back to the only square it had available, and that's where we deliver the very, very rare, always satisfying pawn checkmate, pawn to e7 checkmate. Particularly in the middle game, those are exceedingly rare and very satisfying. And yeah, my eyes just lit up when I saw it, and I wanted to share that with all of you. So that is essentially the game. Once they went back, let's just jump back to this pretty innocuous looking but pretty devastating blunder, where they let us crack on in with our brilliancy here. Brilliancy again up for debate, and from then on we are just banging down the gates of black's position with all the pieces available to us, and a nice little pawn checkmate. So that is all from me today, folks. If you did enjoy it, feel free to like and subscribe and stick around and make my day. And also let me know if you've had any lovely pawn checkmates. Feel free to post the links to the game down below and we might cover off some of those. Or any other massive successes with the gorgeous Vienna Gambit. That's all from me today, folks. Have a good one. Take it easy.